Good morning, everybody. So we're here at another ECOS Linemen Safety National Webinar. This will be 009, episode 9. And this is going to be Practice Primes Proficiency, Tactical Safety by Mr. Billy Martin. And not sure if you all have seen his 004 Flip the Safety Dynamic from last May. It's a wonderful safety video. You guys got to have it and keep it, and this will be similar. You got to have it and keep it, share with your crews. So real quick, we want to talk about ECOS real quick. Electric Culture of Safety announcement here just yesterday. Xcel Energy just gave us an approval. They're endorsing ECOS now, and thanks for Mr. Taylor out of North Dakota. He really pushed this, and Xcel Energy is using these safety videos from ECOS for all their crews now. They're spreading the word, getting it to all their crews. This will be number, I think we got 11 videos now that you guys can have after this is ready, hopefully next week, from Mr. Billy. So get aboard on ECOS. Here's how you can contact me, get some information, ask questions, any concerns or any suggestions, and I can register you, or you can just register by texting capital BIERER 22828. All right. So it's real simple. Once you're in, you get the announcements, you get all the live line links like for today's training. And then you once the recordings are completed, then you'll receive those as well. So it's just sharing safety. There is no cost. The very best of the very best in the country, safety trainers, safety directors, safety managers, speakers, lots of experience, decades of experience. They're all giving back, and they're doing it at no cost. And this is exactly what we have here today with Mr. Billy Martin. And he's going to talk about himself. He's going to talk about some really good stuff today that you need to have here and in here. All right? So appreciate it. Mr. Billy?
Hello. I'm Billy Martin. Thanks, Brent. This is a great opportunity, and I'm honored to actually have an opportunity to talk to you guys. A little plug for ECOS. Also, you know, this is for the industry by the industry, right? This is the you guys have the wisdom and the knowledge, and we need to start sharing your story with everybody else. So this is, I'm just doing my part today, but be thinking about your turn, all right? Today I'm going to be talking about tactical safety, the 3 Ps, Practice Primes Performance. But before I do that, it just doesn't seem right not to say a word for what's going on in our industry right now. We got the Hurricane Ian with all the linemen in Florida and utility people, and I just shout out to you guys for all you're doing there. I mean, this is a mantle of responsibility. You guys might think you accepted to become linemen, but really you chose a mantle of responsibility. And thank you for that. You're a small percentage of our country. There's linemen in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland right now, and in Puerto Rico, North Carolina, South Carolina. So this is a big undertaking. So what I want you to do today is just, if you're watching this video and you're thinking about the storm restoration, think about how you affect the guy next to you, because this is a team sport, right? This isn't leader follower anymore. This is test and learn. Sunday, there was 2 workers in Smyrna, Florida, that were hurt by electric shock, and you can see here, they say the man who was believed to be in his 20s was taken to the hospital with critical burns to his face, back, arms, and hands. The woman that was there actually had minor injuries and refused care. But I got to tell you, this whole ECOS thing is the reason we're doing this is that right there. No matter what we do, we don't seem to be able to push the needle. So this is an attempt, another attempt today to get this industry to start looking at the secret to pushing the needle is you guys, right? You guys have the knowledge, the power, and you need to get connected to each other so this stuff doesn't happen. Right? You're not responsible for where you are, but you're responsible for where you're going. Right? So that's the message. My heart goes out to the family, and we're going to hear that, prayers and thoughts, but it's not enough. We need to fix this in the beginning so we're not reading about this on the other end. And that's what ECOS is about, And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. Little storm message for you guys. I can't go on with my presentation. It just seems rude not to talk a little bit about a storm message here. You know, in our evolution, we evolved with these two things. These two little yellow things on your kidneys are adrenal glands. And when you guys get the call for the storm, it's, you know, here we go, right? You're going to make some money. It's a lot of camaraderie, and you're into this. Our best work is helping other people, and we are at our best when we are helping other people restore power and be better themselves. But there's a caveat to that. So I know right now some of the guys are in parking lots, and you're getting geared up to work. You get some work, and then you have to wait for more work. And this start and go keeps revving the adrenaline up from your kidneys. And what happens? You get adrenal fatigue. It's actually a thing. There's cortisol and adrenaline and norepinephrine and surging into your brain, and that's a fight or flight mechanism normally, so it gets you ready to go. But when it carries on for a long time, it starts to wear off, and then you get adrenal insufficiency. So I just want to warn you, right about now on this storm, you're starting to notice that the guy next to you on the truck is starting to smell bad. You're watching the way he picks his teeth when he eats lunch, right? It doesn't look he's telling jokes that aren't that funny, and you're starting to get a little irritable. And if you're getting irritable, it's physiologic, it's not you. And the guy you're with is having the same experience. So here's what I want you to do. This is my storm message. Instead of starting getting grumpy and frustrated and upset, turn it around, laugh, and tell everybody, hey, I'm starting to get frustrated and angry, and I think it's that adrenaline thing. That's all right? That's my message. Just accept what's happening to you, but share it with your brother. Don't disconnect. All right?
There are no grand celebrations here, no speeches, no bright lights. But there are great athletes. Somehow we've come to believe that greatness is reserved for the chosen few, for the superstars. The truth is, greatness is for all of us. This is not about lowering expectations. It's about raising them for every last one of us. Because greatness is not in one special place. And it is not in one special person. Greatness is wherever somebody is trying to find it.
I love that commercial. What I like most about it is it's a Nike commercial, and you don't see any sneakers, because the most successful people in the world tell you what they believe, and Nike believes in greatness, believes in achieving high levels. And you guys find your greatness. You have so much potential, but our potential is in when we help each other reach that potential, not necessarily be the only ones holding it. So it's not leader-follower, it's leader making leaders. And that's, if we want to move this industry forward, that's kind of where we have to go. And once we believe that it's leader making leaders, our actions have to be moving pictures of those beliefs. And if they're not, you're in conflict with yourself. And how can you do anything and move forward with anyone else if you're in conflict with yourself? So decide what you believe. You are great. You guys have more knowledge than anything. And regardless of what situation you're in, if you're waiting for the system to move you, find your greatness. All right? So let's move forward with this. When things happen in the industry, it's seldom a lack of knowledge. It's more often a barrier or an inability to apply the knowledge we have. And often you'll see in a lot of these incident analysis, if somebody has to be retrained. And I know that's frustrating because that isn't necessarily always the case. Usually if you need to be retrained, you've already asked for that. And why do I know this? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'm Billy Martin. I was a lineman for 20 years roughly. I've been in the electric industry since 1977. At the same time, simultaneously, I became a ski patrol and a paramedic. So I've been flying on a helicopter as a flight paramedic, now flight nurse paramedic for 22 years. So I get to see the other side of these incidents, and what Brett is doing and the whole ECOS gang is doing is trying not to live the outcome and the consequence, but to get ahead of it. And that's what this whole discussion is about. So my program is on practice primes proficiency. Let's start to understand that. Let's start with practice. All right, so if you want to get good at the violin, you practice. You have your kid in the football team, he goes to practice. You want to, no matter what you want to be good at, you do a dry run or a dress rehearsal. There's practice. But we as humans don't really like thinking about bad things. We don't like thinking about good things. We want instant gratification. We want to feel good. We want things that make us happy. But the reality is, if we don't think about that thing that's going to get us and practice for that event, we won't be ready. It'll be our first dry run. I think Quanta has this program called Sticky. They use that as an acronym, stuff that kills you. And it's good because when they go to a job site, they're starting to use this in that group. All right, what's sticky about this job? Right? It's just an easy way to kind of breeze over a little bit the uncomfortableness of that we're actually looking for things that could kill us. But that's, right now we have a young man with burns to his face, back, and hands in Smyrna, Florida, because he missed the thing. He let the monster out of the wire. We don't know why. I'm not blaming anybody, but we need to practice for those things. If you want to get good at something, you have to practice. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about, we want people, we say, hey, everybody can speak up, but we need to practice speaking up if we're going to do that, because the first time you speak up shouldn't be the time you need it, right? Stop work authority, same thing. I love hearing that. Everyone has stop work authority, but maybe we should role play that. You know, have the foreman, hey, Prentice, I want you to stop this job today at any point you want. See what happens. That's called practice, right? I want you to practice something right now too, and this is a little different, and I haven't done this. Every presentation I do is my first one, so bear with me. So I want you to say the word practice. You guys are gonna have to help me here. Say your word practice out loud. Go ahead. Say the word practice out loud so we can all hear you.
Practice.
All right. Now I want you to say it in your mind to yourself so nobody can hear you. All right? Did you hear yourself say practice? Your answer is going to be yes. There's almost nobody here. Brent's here, but he's already done this with me. So think about that voice. You are able to hear something without any sound in your mind and say something to yourself. That means when you're doing something of high consequence, you need to listen to that voice. And if that voice says something's wrong, it might be, it might not be, but you need to address it. And it's a skill. If you want to practice getting good at listening to that voice, you got to first be aware it exists. So you can talk in your mind to yourself. So can the guy next to you. So when that voice is telling you things you shouldn't be listening to, you have the power to change it, right? But you have to learn that in order to practice. And today we're going to look at things from a little bit different perspective, all right? I'm going to share some things that I have in my life that I've had to practice. Having been a lineman, every time you hang a new bank, you're practicing. But every bank you hang has a different hazard on it. So you need to identify them and then talk as a group about that thing. You need to practice for that event that could happen, even if it's uncomfortable. All right, that's kind of where we're going. I spent a lot of time on this helicopter the last 22 years. And while I was a lineman for part of it, line supervisor, I was a supervisor for 9 years in a utility. And I was a lineman in a utility. And I know it's different with contractors and utility linemen. We're all linemen. I had the blessing to be in the same territories all the time with similar crews. And I didn't have the pressure that the contractors have. Contractors have to perform in order to come in under their bid so they can be profitable, so they can get more work. Electric meters paid my paycheck. So I didn't have that pressure. So you guys have a little more pressure than I have. But this helicopter has taught me some things. And because I'm in medicine, so I'm a paramedic and I'm a critical care nurse. But because of that, I know anatomy and physiology. And because I know anatomy, I know mechanism of injury. And it's something you guys don't think about much, right? Because it's not in your venue. But I know if you crash a motorcycle and I'm showing up, there's a pretty good chance you're going to have a broken femur, right? And I've straightened out a number of broken legs, all in different body parts, because I know the handlebar is going to catch your thigh on while you're being ejected. I know if you get T-boned from the side, that your spleen is right there, and there's a good chance you're going to have a bleed that won't show up. It may only be a pain in your shoulder, because it refers from a nerve, the vagus nerve, from your diaphragm to your shoulder, right? I know what a broken face looks like, and I might even show you later, so you know. But when we understand the mechanism of injury, we start to see the things that cause it, right? I know what it's like to rescue people that have been T-boned. So when I'm pulling out at an intersection, that's vivid in my memory. I'm more careful about how I pull out. If you're doing anything, so I've straightened a number of legs, lower legs, upper legs, where they're laying there with their leg at a really ugly angle, and that imprints in my mind. So now I see things that might cause that fracture. If you start looking for things that are sticky, things that could hurt you, and you discuss it with your crew, you imprint things in your mind, so you're more likely to see the risk. This is pretty simple. This is neuroscience, and it's why I'm talking to you today. Our helicopter pilots practice flying the helicopter. This is one landing at a ski area. We have a lot of really serious incidents at ski areas. And sometimes they will come just early in the morning before, and will land in places so they've practiced before they go to their event. That just seems to make sense, right? We get inserted from time to time. Every now and then we get inserted where we have to go, because if the Rangers are there and somebody's hurt really bad, we may not be able to land, so they'll drop us in, and then we'll go to a place, get the patient to a place where we can pull them off. Or we'll drop in and pull them off into Stokes. And because of these practice, I have a better idea of how injuries work. I know that if you're on a pole and you're strapped to that pole and you fall over and you land, your weight is going to pull the pole that way. You're going to land on your back, and that's going to break your pelvis in the front. It's going to cause a separation right at the symphysis pubis, and you're going to be in a lot of pain, and we're going to have to put on a strap to pull it together. So when I'm climbing, I know that your pelvis is going to break if you fall down. There's a high likelihood. If you know that before you climb, you might be more careful to fail safely, to tie the pole off, to do something, but you have to consider it. You can't grow corn without planting corn. Right? You need to plant the idea in the back of your mind and kind of practice, even if it's just practicing it in your mind, but practice before you have the event. What is the event? What are we going to do if it happens? All right? These are a couple pilots. This is the Huey. That's the Huey. So that's a different aircraft. It takes 2 pilots to fly it. It also has a winch. But we were on our way to a mission to look for a 3-year-old, and they found a 3-year-old. So they practiced. They're flying around the nap of the earth, looking over the territory in the Adirondack Mountains to get an idea of what the terrain is, because the weather isn't as always good as it was that day. And if they know the terrain, they're prepared to go into it. All right? They practice for the event. This is a Bell 430. this is on my way to go to pick up a critical patient that's having a heart attack, and we're going to fly them to a higher level of care. And I'm mentally in my mind in that aircraft thinking about all the things I need to do when I show up for that patient, right? I'm preparing, I may be looking out the window, but I'm trying to get in the moment. And you watch athletes do this, right? They simulate in their minds. Jason Day, before he golfs, closes his eyes and imagines the swing. A lot of the downhill ski racers will close their eyes and they'll actually envision. And linemen, we do this. I've watched you. We get to a pole, we look up and everybody's pointing up and they say, yeah, and you're seeing yourself in the bucket or in hooks. That's visualization and that's really good. But you need to realize how important that is. And sometimes, imagine if Jason Day was getting ready to swing and would say, hey dude, wait a minute, you didn't sign the job brief. And you interrupt that. When you're in the zone, that's sacred time, man. And you're with somebody who may not think as fast as you need to give them time to catch up. Because you want them to be as good as you, then you need to give them time, right? Hey, no, I'll never mind, you'll get there. There isn't time for that, because that's when we disconnect and that's when stuff happens. So this one's a little different. So this looks the same as the practice, right? You can just barely see there's a Stokes being pulled up into the helicopter. This was not practice. We were lowered down in the top of this mountain to go 400 feet into a cave where a fellow about 28 years old landed on his head. He fell 15 feet onto his head. And the drill went we took 3 hours to get him out of the cave and then up into that helicopter. And the reason we could do it is because we practiced before the event. We didn't just go there, oh, we got to go do this, let's do it. That event was practiced for long before we needed it. This is me as a lineman some time ago. I'm wearing a yellow hard hat, which was my father's hard hat. That's why nobody else has the yellow hard hat. But this was a group that we worked together all the time. I think it was a 34-5 job. This is John Akurai. And I got to tell you, I've worked thousands of hours because I was in a utility with John Akurai in a bucket. John was a communicator, right? He was the guy who would broadcast what he was going to do. Hey, I'm moving down to this end of the arm. Hey, I'm doing this now. He would just talk his way through. And because I worked with him for so many hours, I got to expect that. And then I would reciprocate. I'd say, oh, I'm going to do this. And we created a communication and a link between us that kept us safe because we communicated with each other, right? No matter what it was, he wasn't doing it for him, right? So, I don't want to get into politics here, but I'm a gun owner, and I had somebody tell me, that doesn't like guns, and I'm okay. I don't infringe my belief on anybody. You can believe what you want, but they said to me, that gun's never going to save you. He says, you're never going to be able to pull that gun out in time to save you. And I said, I realize that. And then I told him, I said, I'm a paramedic. I didn't become a paramedic to save me. Right? I said, and if somebody's going after you with an AR-15 in some grocery store, I said, I might be able to save you. So it's a mantle of responsibility. I've accepted as a paramedic, if you roll over in a car in front of me, I'm going to help you. If I'm on a line job and somebody gets hurt, it's my mantle of responsibility. I have the knowledge. The gun is the same thing. As a lineman, it's our mantle of responsibility. We accept the bad weather, moving towards a storm when everybody's moving away, working unbelievable hours in not great conditions, getting box lunches, but getting people's lights on. We accept that mantle of responsibility. Sometimes you get frustrated and upset, but what we need to do is stay connected, because it's the communication between you guys that's going to lift us out of this sequence we're in, where somebody in Smyrna has now got a flash injury. Because somewhere there was a disconnection there. I don't care what the reason is, you can trace it back to a disconnection. We want to point fingers, but somewhere there was a disconnection in either knowledge or in interpersonal communication. This is a rope team. I'm on this rope team. There's 4 of us. That's the mountain that blew the top off. What's the name of that? Mount St. Helens. That's Mount St. Helens in the background. And we're at the Muir camp at 10,000 feet on Mount Rainier. In order to do glacier travel, you need to learn to be ready for the risks of glacier travel, right? So you travel together on a rope team, because that's what a crevasse looks like, right? When you're up at altitude, there's 100 feet thick of ice that stays there year round. And because it's on a slope, gravity wants to separate it, and it cracks, and it creates these huge crevasses. And then the weather, you can see the snow bridge in the background here. There's a snow bridge on this one. Sometimes there'll be a bridge that blows across the whole crevasse because the weather's so bad, it'll drift across, and if you crash through that, you die. So you have to learn some skills in order to do glacier travel. So we practice for the event. The event is falling in a crevasse. We tie each other together with rope. We have a plan on how to arrest our fall on an ice axe, and another plan on how to pull the person out of the crevasse. And you actually we practice that. We stand in front of a crevasse on a rope team. One person drops in, and the next person dives on their ice axe. It's a practical exam that you cannot fail, because if you do, that person dies. But that's the price, right? You want to be good enough so you know you're going to be able to respond. A couple of my colleagues hanging out in the crevasse there. So that's what practicing for the event looks like. We do it in the helicopter. We practice before we do a winch. We do it and if we're going to do glacier travel. But in order for this to work, that team has to communicate, and we have to be able to express and contribute what it is that we're thinking when we're thinking it, right? So psychological safety, this is from Mr. Taylor's book. There's inclusion safety is the first level, learner safety is the next level, and then contributor safety, and then challenger safety, be able to challenge the status quo. If you're getting beat up when you're trying to learn, let's say an apprentice, and you say, yeah, you're stupid, what are you doing? How stupid are you? It's not safe for that person to learn. We are better than that, right? We need to listen to that voice in our head that says, my goal is to help somebody become the best version of themselves. When we are helping people become the best version of themselves, we are being the best version of ourselves. So regardless what you're going through, that person, you want that person to be as good as you. You don't want us to be this, we don't want to get into the situation where, yeah, I want your light to shine as long as it's not brighter than me, right? We don't want to get into that situation. So learner safety is really important. Once we've gotten to learner safety, then you have contributor safety. That means that apprentice will contribute even if he's wrong. He doesn't care if he's wrong, but if it's on his mind, you need to know what it is, right? So that's in order for me to, the teams that I've been involved with in the helicopter, at altitude, on glacier travel, backcountry in avalanche country, that is a known between all of us. Everybody's at the same level. It doesn't matter your level of experience. If somebody thinks they hear something or see something, that's what we do. So when you learn crevasse rescue, you're more likely to see that snow bridge, right? If you learn avalanche training, you're more likely to see that the trees are flagged, that there's no limbs on this side because you're actually in an previous avalanche zone. But if you don't learn that, you just walk by that like it's nothing. So practicing primes you to be prepared for that next event, all right? That's kind of where I'm going with this idea. And I'm going to keep doing this. You guys are smart, right? I mean, you guys know your work better than any human. You've seen more polls than any human should have to, right? You know more about polls. Yet you still go to that rule, right? Hey, let's get the hammer test. Let's hit that pole because it doesn't look very good. Let's hit it. And we think hitting the pole and agreeing on the sound and then driving a screwdriver a foot down, that's the rule, made it safe. I don't know who made that rule up. I've asked 100 linemen nobody can tell me, but it's not definitive. Your sound and my sound might not be the same, and that square inch of pole being good doesn't tell me much, right? But the reality is you're getting out your hammer because of how much you know. You already decided the pole's a piece of crap. That's why the hammer's in your hand. So if we're all in agreement that you have that level of wisdom, let's just fail safely. Let's tie the pole off on the way up. Get some rope, man. It's not a huge deal. Be ahead of it, not behind it. Yeah, how's that? I think that's good. I think that sounds really good. I don't think that's enough. I'm showing this picture. If you were pulling up on this scene right now with the knowledge you have as a lineman, just take a look at the picture for a minute. And think about what you're looking at here. You got a couple firemen. You have what looks like somebody who knows something about electricity. He's got a hard hat on and rubber gloves on. You got people in a car, wire on the car. So everybody has stop work authority. Go ahead. You going to stop it? You going to be in time before those feet hit the ground? Do we know for sure that there's no induction on that car just because he's holding this wire up? There's a lack of knowledge here, obviously, or a lack of ability to apply the knowledge he has. He knows he needs rubber gloves, and he's got sleeves on, and he knows he's going to lift the wire so the person can walk out. But the problem isn't that wire. The problem is being the bridge between this car and the ground. And that problem existed long before that guy picked that wire up. So how do you stop that? It's too late, right? If you're going to wait for stop work authority or someone speak up, hey, you're doing the wrong thing, are they going to listen to you? If you don't practice for that event, you don't even know if they're going to listen to you, right? So I don't see a lot of people practicing stop work authority. If you have, please write to me about it, tell me about it, or try it, let me know how it works. But I don't see us practicing for that event. If that person lives, it's because they're lucky, right? We can't rely on luck. We rely on luck, we end up with another person burned. And I'm going to tell you, I've flown the broken pelvis from falling in a fall. I've flown the burned patient, and I still smell of burned flesh. And I know mechanism of injury, so I know that burn patient, if he's burnt bad enough, is going to have kidney trouble because it's called rhabdomyolysis. All those bad cells that burn that are getting your bloodstream are filtered through your kidneys. And you start peeing brown mush, right? And if your kidneys survive that, good, but if they don't, you're going to be on a whole another issue. This is a long-term problem if it's bad enough. So I hope I'm not belaboring this, and I'm not trying to tell you all of my experience because of me. What I'm trying to do is get, you guys are smart. I want you to assimilate this information with what you can figure out you need to practice, right? If you do a job brief, and then after the job brief, everybody, you just go around the room. You say, all right, let's confirm, what's your role? I mean, you guys do this when you put on a jumper, right? You got three-way communication. Let's do it in a job brief. After it's over, okay, what's your role? Any concerns? What's your role? You get to the apprentice. What's your role today? Got any concerns? You get that apprentice to speak up every day in that job brief, right after it. It's already been proven in a study. It's called the activation phenomenon. It's Atul Gawande. He wrote the Checklist Manifesto. It's been proven that there's 80% more likelihood he's going to speak up. But we don't practice that. We just assume, and you've all done it. If you're a foreman, you've told somebody to go do a job, and then you look up at the bucket and say, hey, are you doing what I told you to do? And the guy says, yeah, I think I'm doing what I thought you said, because we never confirmed it. That's on us, right? That's on us. So see something, say something should really be see something, do something. Because by the time you say something, it's going to be too late. If you want to do stop work authority, you want people to speak up, you should practice speaking up. If I'm going to go on a glacier, I need to practice glacier rescue, right? If I'm going to be winched into a helicopter, shouldn't be my first time. Somebody gets hurt on a job, shouldn't be your first dry run. Let's look at this just for an example. This is a crew working on some street lights, new traffic lights. So if you're in the industry, you have been somewhere where something has dropped out of a bucket and broken a windshield. I know it. I know somebody out there, something has fallen out of a bucket and broke a windshield. And we got lucky if it broke the windshield, that there wasn't an accident. If it didn't hit somebody and hurt them, we're lucky. If it was just a windshield, we're lucky. But we know that we're going to have a bucket out over the road. Do we have that discussion? All right, what are we going to do if we drop something? What's in your bucket that we could drop? And could it cause an accident? Where is that car going to swerve? We just assume everything's going to go fine because it feels good. We have to assume that things aren't going to go fine if we want to change what's happening. All right? And then just it doesn't take long, just take a moment, because once you plant that question, is there anything in your bucket that can drop on somebody? you have to look, right? And you get to that point where you're kind of reaching out and you don't have a good grip on the socket wrench, it might trigger that, whoa, wait a minute, I got to move my position. But I can guarantee you, if you don't talk about it first, you don't practice for dropping that wrench by discussing it, you won't be ready. This is the other thing we do with the rule book. This is a pole that burned in half at a ski area, and I was there with these guys. It was 400 pounds worth of equipment and men to rig something up so the ski area could keep running. But I want to ask you, do you see that construction? Is that in the standards book? Is that in your standards book? How about climbing on that? So I'll ask you this question, is it safe? So if it's not in the standards book, is it unsafe? Here's the reality. The amount of experience here devised a plan because they discussed it, they weighed it out, and they determined that they could do it this way safely because of the amount of knowledge they have, right? It's not a standard practice. It's not a standard design. I know their line is isolated on both ends so that they made sure that there was no way to feed either way to it, so it's completely isolated wire. So everything they did everything they could, but it was their design and their discussion. Greatness, right? Find your greatness. And if you're a safety guy and you're looking at this, well, you can't do that, it's not in the standards. Listen, creations, innovation, and inventions start with us, right? Just because somebody hasn't designed it doesn't mean it's not possible. But if you have a plan to fail safely, this is bolted. These arms are tough. It's bolted. They're only on half of the arm. To me, they took every risk that they could consider, and they finished the job, and they looked it over slowly before they went up and got on it. In my estimation, it's not a standard build, but it worked. I spent a significant amount of time at altitude. This is on the way to the Everest Valley. Up from, you fly out of Kathmandu in Nepal to Lukla. Lukla Airport's 9,300 feet, and then it's a trek up through all these tea houses and villages. There's no roads, and everything travels by yak. But when you're in the altitude and you start getting up above 10, 12, 14,000 feet, you have to learn about altitude sickness, acute mountain sickness, AMS, and altitude sickness. HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema, and HACE, H-A-C-E, high altitude cerebral edema. And they both have different signs and symptoms. And you become astutely aware if somebody in your group is starting to exhibit these signs. The cure is to go down 2,000 feet and spend a little time and then come back up. Because some people need more time. It's not what kind of shape you're in, it just happens. But unless we train for this, we don't recognize the signs. And we have people that die on Everest every year because they're not really mountaineers, but they have enough money to pay for somebody to bring them up. But they're not trained in it, so they're waiting for somebody else to tell them. We can't be linemen like that, right? We can't wait for the safety guy to tell us that we need to decide as a group, right? Because if the safety guy goes home or goes out for lunch and he's the one making it safe, we're screwed, right? It's us. So if we're going to be a family and a brotherhood, then we need to raise each other up, right? That's the goal. So that's Mount Everest behind me. I'm at 18,500 feet there, and altitude has risk. Once you discuss the risk with your group and everybody has at the same level, then everybody is watching out for everyone else. You know, everything you do. So when you end up if you're a line crew right now, I'm in the bucket, you're on the ground. All right, if you separate yourself in silos, you take care of your work, I'll take care of mine. That doesn't work, because I've been on the accident where the guy sets the bucket down on the lineman's head, or when he tops the pole off and he drops it on the guy on the ground, right? Sharpens his chainsaw, spins around, cuts him in the throat with it. When you're disconnected, that happens. We have to stop that. We have to be connected all the time, right? That's the deal. So when we're at altitude, no matter where we are, when we're training for an event, we recognize the signs and symptoms that can make it go awry. And then here's the hard part. Linemen, utility workers are driven to get the work done. There's time pressures, there's storm pressures, there's daylight, all of these things are driving you and you're trying to get it done. But if that thought, little voice we met earlier in your head speaks up to you, or worse than that, somebody else's head speaks up to them. Because it didn't end up in your head doesn't mean he's wrong, right? If there's a consequence tied to what he's talking about, you need to take 5 seconds and discuss it. That's all. 5-10 seconds. And entertain the idea that something might be wrong. Because we end up not correlating that information. Because it's happened to him, well, it doesn't, I've been doing this 20 years, that's him. We are a team, we're connected. If it's him, it's me. That's my arm, that's my leg, right? He's a part of me. This was, we pitched a tent at 10,000 feet going into the Mount Kenya National Park. We were climbing Mount Kenya a number of years ago. I've done it twice. I'm going back 2024. This sign was there, notice to visitors, dangerous animals at night. I think that's pretty cool. That's kind of cool. This isn't Kansas anymore, Toto, right? So then we pitched the tent. I go to sleep. I got to pee at 2 o'clock in the morning. I get up and I go out in a beautiful moonlight night. I'm in Africa and I got my headlight on and I look and there's these green eyes 25 to 50 yards out all around my tent. I'm like, whoa, look how cool that is, right? So I go back to sleep. I get back up and the guides get up and they're cooking in the morning and I go over and I said, hey, just curious, I got out of my tent to pee and they stopped me. You did what? He said, I got out of my tent. Didn't you read the sign? They said. Why did you get out of your tent? He said, those were Cape buffalo. They kill more people than any other animal in Africa, and then the hyenas will drag you off. Get a pee bottle, do not get out of your tent. But I didn't make the correlation between the sign and not getting out of my tent. It's not that I'm stupid, it just didn't happen for me. So don't assume that because you've given somebody a sign that they've made that correlation. Sometimes you have to confirm, right? Just like the three-way communication before you put the jumper on. Going hot, right? It's obvious it's going hot, but you still say going hot. It's the same thing. Hey, dangerous animals at night, don't get out of your tent. It was a good incentive. I don't want to get dragged off, so I didn't get out of my tent. Just a couple more pictures. This is Mount Kenya. That's 1,000 foot of rock right here off of a glacier to 17,020 feet. That's what it looks like in the distance. The little red building's a hut. There's a whole other story I'm not going to tell you today, but we slept on that ledge where that guy is at 16.7 because we got lost and we woke up, one of the three of us was sick, but that's a whole other story. That one's in my book. So what happens, so I talked about practice. That's the practice. Practice primes proficiency. We get better when we practice. Happens every time. You guys simulate work, not simulate work, but organize work and streamline it all the time, and you get better and better and better at it. Priming and conditioning normalizes deviation, all right? So, and rituals create habitual behavior for good or for bad. So things become a ritual. The job brief can become a ritual. The safety moment can become a ritual. You just do the safety moment because you're supposed to, right? So priming and conditioning are very similar. And I'll kind of give you an example. This is my late dog, Dash, Great Pyrenees. He's about 110 pounds in this picture. And if you're a hunter and you go into the woods, the deer know the difference between us and not us. Deer will run. So if there's a 110 pound dog and there's a deer, the deer will run because the deer's DNA has taught it to run, right? The problem is if you walk that 110 pound dog around and you run into the deer enough, the deer just stand there. This is Dash looking at a nice little spike over there and a fawn and a mother that are just close to us. That's normalized deviation, right? They're like it's normal. Matter of fact, this little fawn, when it first saw us, his tail went up and he ran right into his mother. Just like oh my God, because the little fawn hasn't learned yet. His DNA is telling him this is not where I should be. But the mother just looks at the fawn and says, hey, that's Billy Martin and his dog. Don't worry about it, right? And that's what we do as linemen. That's what we do in the utility business as tree trimmers. Once we get away with something, that line of safety is crossed. We just push it further, right? And we keep pushing it further until pretty soon something happens and we jump back. Oh my God, that was close. Well, you're not safe yet because the line of safety is still 3 paces behind you. That's normalized deviation. The only way we catch that is if you are talking to me and point it out to me. And this is the other part that we really need to talk about. Can we get over the defensiveness, right? You guys are great at what you do. If I point out to you, hey dude, you're not wearing your vest, don't get defensive, you know? Just say thank you, right? I mean, it's not making you any less. You are no less of who you were because somebody points something out to you. If once we begin to defend ourselves, we make it less likely that person will contribute the next time. Because if we make it uncomfortable for the person who's trying to help you, you think they're going to help you again? Odds are against it. So if we truly understood how much we know, we would listen to ourselves more, right? That little voice that talks to you in your head, that doesn't make any sound that anyone else can hear, but you can hear, can be right and it can be wrong. But if you know something about something and there's a consequence tied to it, and you don't listen to it, you're missing an opportunity to practice for that event, right? Because if you just blow it off like maybe we'll be lucky this time, that's not so good. I'm going to just, as a ski patrol, we practice for, I'm a ski patrol also, actually I'm retiring this year, but we've done rescues and we practice for these events before they happen. And this is the mountain that I spent a lot of time at. And one of the things we practice for is gondola evacuation. I'm going to do that on the 23rd of this month. I still do it twice a year. You climb a tower, and on the tower is a rope. And you're supposed to be able to do this solo because the state where I live in New York, says you have to be able to evacuate the gondola within 2 hours if it stops, because the weather's pretty bad in northern New York. So it could be 20 below, whatever. So you climb the tower, you clip into the cable with a Petzl wheel, you belay yourself off the tower down to the gondola, and then you lower the people out of the gondola and go on down to the next tower. And we practice for that twice a year so that we're ready for the event. It's another case where we don't wait for the event to happen and then go do it. We practice for it, right? So I know I'm repeating myself over and over again, but I don't see people practicing speaking up. I don't see people practicing stop work authority. I don't see practicing helping the apprentice contribute more and be more comfortable to contribute. I don't see that happening. So I'm okay with being wrong. If we continue doing exactly what we're doing, we'll have the same result. There's 100 workers, not just linemen, 100 workers a week in our country go to work and never go home. They die on the job. 5,000 workers a year, right? 5,000 workers die every week. 100 workers a week, 5,000 a year. So if we want to fix that, we need to try things we haven't tried. And then if you all get behind one of these tactics, and you guys are brilliant, man, you can come up with your own tactic. I don't care what it is. Come up with something to practice the thing you want to be good at. It's really pretty simple. Once you start to practice it, if it works, great, use it or tweak it. If it doesn't work, toss it. The most successful people in the world fail often and quickly. Unsuccessful people continue to do the same thing over and over, expecting different results. You've heard that before, right? Some might call that insanity, some might not. I talked about this already a little bit. If you're going to climb something in the rear lot, and you know a lot about poles, and you pick that hammer up, I want you to laugh at yourself. By the way, laughing is the antidote, right? When your kidneys start to stop producing adrenaline on this storm that you're on, and you're getting a little grumpy, you laugh. And out loud, you expose yourself and be transparent. Say, hey, I'm getting really bitchy, and then laugh about it. That's the antidote. Laughter is mimicry. We mimic each other. Other people will laugh, and it releases oxytocin, which is the hormone of trust. So you can combat that loss of adrenaline with another hormone, but only if you recognize it. You can't mitigate those things if you don't recognize it. That's that. So when you climb a rear lot pole and you're going to pick up that hammer, I want you to laugh. I'm picking up the hammer again. Let's get some ropes. I'm still going to hit this thing, but let's make sure we tie this thing off on the way up. I mean, it's the amount of injury that occurs from a falling pole. There's no excuse not to plan to fail safely. You start practicing, and you'll find there's a lot of things you can practice for. You know, I'm in South Carolina right now. These guys are in Florida. You know, let's let's say you guys are working and it's 100 degrees out and everybody's soaking wet in sweat and one of your members passes out, drops on the ground. Go. Practice for that event. You don't have to do it physically, do it in your head with your team. All right, Joe just went down. What are we gonna do? Right? Where's the first aid kit? How are you gonna cool them off? Who's calling 911? Do you have a cell phone? Is your AED battery up to snuff? All those things will happen because of that one simulation, right? And then once you practice for it, you'll start to recognize when Joe's getting hot before he gets hot, right? You say, hey, Joe, come on down. Let's go get yourself a Gatorade, right? And then there's no reward for not experiencing the event. So but if you practice it, you're less likely to experience it. I don't know how else to tell you this. I love skiing powder. Powder comes with risk because I go into the backcountry and anything over 38 degrees or higher, 34 to 38 to 40 is avalanche terrain. And I know that because I'm avalanche trained, because I've practiced for this event. When we're skiing and we find those flag trees and we know we're going to cross an area that there's been a previous avalanche, we all have a beacon with us, we have a probe to find a body, and we have a shovel. You just have to ski with that stuff. And we don't cross that terrain by ourselves, all together, I mean. We go one at a time. Because if we all go together and there's an avalanche, we can't dig each other out. So we start taking precautions to avoid the event once we understand that the event exists, right? And every other thing you do, somehow in line work, we're driven just to get it done, and we don't take the time to practice avoiding the event because we just assume it's not going to happen. I'm sure the guy in Smyrna in Florida assumed he wasn't going to get burnt that day, right? That was Sunday. We go back in some pretty beautiful terrain. This is in Colorado. But don't let it fool you because in a minute, one moment, I mean, I'm looking right here, there's a cornice right there, right? If I'm skiing this along this cornice, that can fracture, right? If I hasn't tested, we have to test the snow before we go. We even ski cut it. We have to know that this is stable enough for us to ski before we do it. Otherwise, we suffer the consequences. I mean, it used to be, we dig pits and we do a little snow science to determine how the snow is, but we're getting less and less technical, and we're listening more to the sounds and what our skis feel like in the snow, because that pit might be really good. We might learn a lot right there, but around the other side of that hill where we're skiing may not be at all like that pit, where that snow is, where that pit is. So sometimes we'll think we're all prepared for the event because we've done this before, but every event changes every moment in time. This is the gear you ski back in the woods with. A transceiver, a shovel, a probe, and that's a snow saw. And you've probably heard this, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. All right, so we expect that we're going to be fine, everything's going to go fine, and those are the red flags, right? I mean, I'm going to talk about those in a moment, but when you hear I think, maybe, should be, might be, probably, I've said this before, please laugh at those. Those are red flags. Just say, hey, that's one of those words, because that's long enough for you to change your mind. All those words, I think, maybe, should be, probably, might be, mean you don't know, right? So yeah, we should be fine. I think this will work. Or we're running wire. Hey, how much wire you got left in that reel? Yeah, I think there's enough. That should be an all stop. Or I think that's enough. Isn't enough for me if I'm running wire, right? So the other thing I want you to think about here when you're practicing is energy and forces. So we kind of breeze over that. There is so much mechanism of injury in the utility work between the cranes and buckets and the wire itself on the corners that you're running. There's so much force. It's easy just to become complacent and ignore it. Are you in the line of fire? Is someone else in the line of fire, right? So, you know, when you're pulling the pole out, and some people still use pole tongs, and you're pulling the pole out and you got it at a big angle and you're pulling, when that lets loose, if the tongs let loose or if the pole lets loose, is anybody in the line of fire? You got to be in a position to not just risk it, right? If you're creating something under load that can let go, you know, fail safely. Please, at least fail safely. All of these events, right? I mean, working in the dark, working around wires and corners, that broken pole, things are unpredictable. So if it's unpredictable, just get together and talk about what's our fail-safe? What's our fail-safe plan? If we just go, you're working a storm, you're working on 16-hour days, you're hot, you're tired, your adrenaline's wearing off, so you're grumpy and bitchy, and you just want to get it done. Please, just take a moment, stay connected, take a deep breath, man. And recognize when that's happening, because it's a setup. It's a setup for exactly what happened in Smyrna. And I don't know if that's what happened, but I'm going to tell you, you're working on something and something lets loose and hits you in the face. I'm going to share this with you. I did this recently in Texas, and I think you should see this. If you're squeamish, I don't want you to look at the next 2 slides. But if you're not squeamish, you should take a look at this. So, if you're in the line of fire and a block lets loose or something hits you in the face, it can break your face. And that's kind of, you can say, oh, the guy broke his face, and it sounds pretty casual. So let's just take a look at what it really looks like. So this is a CAT scan of a broken face. These bones are cracked right up into the orbit. This is cracked here. Notice the teeth are missing. It's broken there, here. He's got fractures all over his face. That's what happens when you get hit in the face. I'm going to show you the other part of this now, and if you're squeamish, don't look. That's what a broken face looks like. So you're 20 sections back in the woods, and this guy gets in a bad spot, and he cuts a wire, and the arm kicks back and hits him in the face and breaks his face. Are you prepared for that? Have you practiced for that event? I can tell you haven't. And the shocks alone of a guy who tells you I can move the roof of my mouth with my tongue is enough to set you back a little bit. So if you start preparing for these events, then there's a chance. Actually, I'm speaking at IP in November on this subject. I'm going to talk about mechanisms of injury and enhanced first aid training for linemen in those situations. Because if we prepare for the event, we're more likely to see the thing that causes it. And that's kind of where we have to go with this. The other part, I mean, here's a line crew, and you can almost feel them. They're looking up at this pole. They're talking about the plan. I'm looking at body language here. That's the most important moment when you guys start to interact. And do not discourage anybody's thought or idea in these moments, because that's what raises us up. And if we're going to move the industry forward, we have to listen to understand why somebody might even have a stupid idea. It's okay if it's stupid, right? And you might even, linemen aren't, and utility workers aren't gentle. I've told people, look, dude, I'm trying to understand why somebody as smarter than me has such a stupid idea. Explain why you think that's a good idea, and be sincere about it. That's banter. We can do that, right? That's what we do with each other. But if you dismiss them, hey, dude, just shut up. You're just stupid. You can guarantee that person won't contribute again. And that might be the one that saves you. We have this other problem with the human condition is we think because we were told that I told you to do that we're rational, right? We think that all we need to do is tell each other, and then we'll understand, right? So I've seen it happen sometimes with some safety moments. We think because everybody's been told what the safety moment is, now that's on everybody's mind, and it's highly unlikely. The reality is, I mean, if you're a smoker, and forgive me if you are, I'm not picking on you, but it says right on the pack, the Surgeon General's warning that smoking causes lung cancer, heart disease, emphysema, and may complicate pregnancy. That's kind of a warning, right? But people still smoke because we think telling them not to smoke is enough, but it's not. But here's the problem: when you smoke, somebody says, "Oh yeah, well, smoking caused cancer in mice," right? This is the picture that ends up in your mind, right? That's the picture that ends up in your mind. They must have all these mice smoke these cigarettes and they got cancer, and that doesn't really correlate with stopping smoking. But this does. But they don't show that. That doesn't go to your mind. What they do is they shave the back of the mice and they paint cigarette tar on the mice's back, and they grow cancer on their back. So if you're chewing tobacco, that's a warning, right? You have the right to choose But that's actually what happened. The antidote for being human is practice. That's what this talk is about. Practice primes proficiency. If you want to be primed to recognize the risk that you're about to take, you need to practice for that risk. I've pointed it out with a bunch of different things today, right? Helicopter winch training, glacier travel, crevasse rescue, high angle avalanche rescue, high altitude. Line work is no different. So what I want you to do is practice for these triggers, right? If you hear a red flag word, just say, hey, laugh, and that's one of those words. Flip that dynamic, ask questions and listen, right? That's kind of a unique plan, right? I know you're the boss and you're in charge and you're going to tell everybody what to do. Rather than model a narrative every day of your life at work, model asking questions, right? Because if you want to understand what your workforce is doing, you need to listen to them. They listen to you all the time. Let's flip that dynamic and listen to them. And not just ask the question, but let them respond, right? It sounds pretty simple, but we have to try something different or we're going to keep getting the same thing happen. I talked about the activation phenomenon. This is just a reminder for the red flag, right? The antidote for any of this is laughter. So if you just say, that's one of those words, he said, I think. Brett does it all the time. Yeah, I think that'll work, right? I think means he doesn't know, right? So it's okay not to know. It's not a bad thing. But we need to recognize that if we don't know, we should have a plan to fail safely, right? That's the goal. So just to kind of recap, and I think we're going to have a little quick video at the end, and then I'm going to be done here. If you want to practice primes proficiency, then role play stop work. Play a game. We have a whole bunch of crews working, and let's see if the apprentice can really stop the job. Just say, hey, well, I'm uncomfortable with something. Can we stop the job? And if it doesn't stop the job, don't get upset about it. That tells you where you are. Because then let's practice that one more time. All right, you guys, apprentice wants to stop the job. Let's listen to what his concern is, right? Is anybody doing that? Hey, have you seen anybody do that, Brent? I've never seen it. You seen Derek? Ever seen anybody practice stop work authority? No. So there's a simple low-hanging fruit, you guys. Some geniuses in our industry here haven't seen it. So maybe you have. If you have, let me know. But if we don't practice for that thing, we won't be ready for it. You'll get better at it if you make it a practice, right? If I want to play the violin and I don't ever practice, I'm still going to suck at it, and I do, because I do play the violin. And the last piece there, if something's happening and you feel like you need to defend yourself, stop. We have to, defense is not an offense, right? Defense is not a solution. If I'm defending my position, then you're going to be defending your position, and now we're never going to reach the center, right? If you want to know what that looks like, watch television, right? Watch the government. If I don't agree with you, I'll just hold my hand up, and when you're done talking, okay, it's my turn to talk, right? Because I'm going to defend what I believe. I don't need to enforce what I believe on you. I need to be comfortable in what I believe so I can understand what you believe, right? Why do you think this isn't going to work? The other thing you need to look for is dark humor. And the utility industry is full of it, right? You'll have a discussion, and then the guy will walk away and he'll roll his eyes and go, this is going to be a catastrophe, right? He may just be an idiot, or he may not be comfortable speaking up about what his concern is. So just say, hey, dude, well, wait a minute. What do you mean? I don't take it personal. Do you see something I don't? Dark humor, right? I think I told this story. I'll tell it one more time since I have a couple minutes. It was in California, the U.S. Forest Service. This is in Gavin de Becker's book, Gift of Fear. These two managers were sorting the mail because the guy the mail guy was off that day. And they find this gray taped package to the vice president. So they're looking at it and say, yeah, but the vice president's name is the guy that retired. And the two managers said, what do you want to do with this? I don't know. So in walks the new vice president. And they say, hey, dude, I got a package here to the vice president. It's not you. Your name's not on it. What do you want to do with it? And the vice president says, well, let's open it and find out. So one of the managers go, all right, I'll be in my room when the bomb goes off. He goes and closes the door. the package was from the Unabomber, and it killed the other 2 guys, right? So he had a feeling about it, but he wasn't comfortable saying, hey, we shouldn't open the package, right? That banter, that dark humor has messages in it. And if we're in a leadership position, we need to listen for that, because that's somebody trying to speak up that can't. So I want to thank you. I got a video I'm going to show you just to kind of put the icing on the cake here. We have choices on how we respond to each other. We have choices on whether we practice for the event we're about to practice. If you want to get proficient at something, everything else in your life, whether it's your kid's football team, whether it's violin, soccer, fishing, hunting, you practice. Yet we go up every day to change a set of, thinking that 3 transformers on that next bank we're going to change is the same as the last one. It's not. And if there's something, to quote Quanta, if there's some stuff sticky there, something that will kill you, you should talk about that event. We don't like to talk about the failing event, but we should talk about what those possibilities are. All right? And that's my message. If you want to get good at something, you need to practice. It's low-hanging fruit. Practice stop work authority. Practice getting your apprentice to speak up. Practice looking for that thing that's going to catch you, and then talking about it, and then come up with a fail-safe plan. All right? So I'm going to leave you with this video.
Listen up, babies. Life's not fair. You get no say in the world you're born into. You don't decide your name. You don't decide where you come from. You don't decide if you have a place to call home, or if your whole family has to leave the country. Yeah, it's messed up. You don't decide how the world judges a person like you. You don't decide how your story begins, but you do get to decide how it ends. Yes!
Thank you. You decide how the story ends. If we're going to go forward from here, it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It does to the fellow in Smyrna who got burned on Sunday. I said, but it matters how we go forward. And please, let's do something different. If we do the same thing we've been doing, we'll get the same results. But if we can try just something different, like practicing for that, looking for that event and practicing for it, we'll get more proficient at it. Thanks.